Hi, welcome back to this fifth session, fifth workshop. In this one, I plan on looking at balance and imbalance, playing with stability. However, you could think it's quite similar to weight and gravity. But in weight and gravity, I spoke a lot about specific references, and I wanted to sort of recognize the pool of resources that one can pull from in creating one's own dance practice. And really, I mean that in that literal sense. Like, we shouldn't ever think that a dance class is the final solution to being with dance and being sort of knowledgeable and creative around dance. That's a perfect way of learning about a specific way of dancing and approach. But more than anything, I believe we as people who are wanting to have a stronger relationship to dance, we need to work on that and work through the references and the places that we have gained our knowledge from. So in this session, even though there are a lot of crossover and similarities, I'm going to try and not reference too much the other practices. Even though, obviously, when one thinks about balancing and imbalance, one is already struck by perhaps ballet and the pirouette and balancing on one leg, and the imbalance that is sort of conjured by contemporary dance or modern dance through Cunningham and Graham, and even thinking about the balance that is used in breakdancing when people are spinning on their head and balancing on their hands. So I'm going to avoid those references, and yet try and give us some space to consider balance and imbalance as a specific frame. So to start, we can begin by looking at how we're already balancing. We can stand or sit quietly and ask, what does balance feel like? Where is my center of balance? And once we've found that, we can then start to sway, shift, and change the stability. Perhaps even moving to a place where it's harder to balance. Like one foot, or onto our side, or onto our toes, onto our heels, onto our bum with both arms and legs in the air, or maybe even onto our shoulder. And if you are really confident and know what you're doing, onto our arms and head. So let's just play there, going from where are we balanced to shifting the stability to finding balances on different body parts or in different places. So I'm going to pause here and invite you to balance. Great. Hopefully you had some fun playing with those different places of balance. Now I'd like us to experiment with tipping, twisting, reaching beyond our base, and seeing where these imbalances can turn into different types of balance, and what extremities we can start to afford. And this is just developing strength and flexibility, and also exploring what qualities. So you can stay in one kind of balance, just standing on one leg maybe, and play with subtle shifts. What happens when I relax my arms? What happens when I lift my arms? What happens when I close my eyes? What happens if I drop my head to the floor while I'm still standing on one leg? What happens if I try and twist and move? What happens if I rise quickly? What happens if I rise slowly? So trying to sort of understand where those balances, where one balance is coming from, and playing with their different experiments in balancing. And you can move. I mean, if one specific place of balance isn't interesting to you, you can try many as well. So let's play with that. Tipping, twisting, reaching beyond, and exploring. Okay, I'm going to pause here and come back when you feel like you've saturated that. All right, great. We've experimented and we've played with balancing. Now I'd like to invite a play with dynamics. So you can start to move in space like we did in the second session and find a balance. You can zigzag and suddenly turn and shift and find a suspension. Something that we spoke about in the stillness episode. Suspending with balance. Try something slow and fast and see how that affects our balancing. And again, you can be working with one single balance type, place of the body, or many different, trying different things. I mean, essentially, you could be working into a cartwheel and balancing on your hands, or into a pirouette and spinning, using speed and dynamic to start to balance in motion. So we're playing with the different dynamics, and it doesn't all have to be fast and big. It can be slow, and see how that changes. A sort of seeping through, wobbling and shifting and lifting. Nothing is wrong. Stay safe, but give it a play with dynamic, shift, suspension, direction, space. All right. And then after this, we'll come back and reflect. So take 10, 15 minutes and see you in a minute. Now hopefully we've experimented and we have now played with dynamic, and we feel like we are exploring and developing our sense of balance and imbalance. sense of risk, maybe. And perhaps we can even ask that question of how important is risk in our dancing, in our relationship to dance? Is risk like the tightrope walker or the parkour athlete that jumps over walls and has to balance up high? Is that risk important for the dancing? And so ask yourself about what role have these experiences today felt? Have you been surprised? Do you feel in control? And which one do you prefer? And also ask, or I invite you to explore, where were you choosing to practice balancing? Did you go outside and let things balance there? Did you stay indoors? Were you balancing the references from last time or the references from the beginning of this session? And perhaps even, are you balancing feelings, emotions? What does it speak to for you? So take a moment, if you can, to reflect, to journal, to write a few sentences just for yourself, in your own language, in your own words, capturing a little bit what balancing means for you in your relationship to dance. And perhaps if you do have references, if things have come up in your mind, try to think how they're using balance and how important it is for what you're seeing. Do you enjoy when you see someone wobble or take a risk or do something that has a slight danger? Do you like balances that happen with speed and dynamic, or with travel and distance? Or balances that are slow and sustained and controlled and concentrated? Is it the story? Are there stories involved in your balances? Or is it just natural? A sense of being in balance with things. Okay, thank you for today. It's a pleasure to do this and to think. I hope you're getting something from this. It's extremely rewarding for me just to try and think about ways of investigating these different topics. And I hope that we can continue. I'll see you again. Hi, thanks for listening. If you can support the podcast, please go to paypal.me/dancepeter. I'm just looking for a little bit of funding to help support the cost of the hosting. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much.